Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonker. First of all, apologies from my side because there has been a delay in restarting the NCERT Science series. You already know on the channel StudyIQ IAS, I was running the NCERT Science discussion where I have already completed Science NCERTs for class 6 and class 7. I received so many messages regarding the class 8 discussion. It was quite overwhelming. Thank you very much for your messages. In fact, I have replied to almost everybody suggesting that the classes are going to restart soon. So better late than never. We are restarting the NCERT Science series where I'll be continuing the discussion from class 8 here on StudyIQ IAS English. You already know the plan of action. Means under this NCERT discussion for class 8, we'll be talking about specific chapters. So we'll begin our discussion today with crop production and then we'll move on for the chapter-wise discussion in the subsequent classes where the classes would be hosted regularly on StudyIQ IAS English. We'll be discussing all the chapters one by one. So first, today's discussion is crop production and management, where we'll understand about cropping patterns, different cropping seasons, what is the procedure for crop production and how we manage the harvested crop. That's the agenda of today's discussion. Let's begin without any delay. But before that, if you're preparing for UPSC civil service examination, there is a good news for all the aspirants. Please spread the word regarding StudyIQ's prelims to interview initiative. This is a one-of-a-kind program where StudyIQ will be hand-holding you from day one. We will be helping with your prelims preparation, your mains preparation, your interview preparation. If you clear preliminary examination 2024, the entire expenses of your mains residential program, which would be running in Delhi, it would be borne out by StudyIQ. This entire program has been designed at an affordable price of 30K. And this discounted price would be available only if you use my code Rahul Live. The classes are starting very, very soon. So I'll see you in the class also, right? All right, let's begin our discussion. I told you our discussion for today is crop production and management. Now, we have seen in our previous discussion in NCERT 6, NCERT 7, we have already established that for survival of any organism, for survival of humans, for animals, what we need air. So we discussed a chapter on air. We need water. We discussed the importance of water as well. And we also discussed something called as nutrition, right? We have discussed about the human digestive system, where I've told you for our nutrition, we need food. Food means we need carbohydrates, we need proteins, we need fats, and we need other nutrients. Basically, macronutrients as well as micronutrients are needed for our survival, for our well-being. Now, the question is, where does this nutrition come from? We need energy for our metabolism, for our day-to-day activity, we need energy, right? Now, where do we get this energy from? Where do we get this food from? That is where crop production comes into picture. If there is one individual, it is quite easy. One individual can produce something for himself and then consume and they can survive. But if we talk about a country as a whole, we are a population of 140 crore. So we need enormous amount of food grains. And that is why we need to go for large scale food production. And that is where this massive crop production comes into picture. And today's domain is basically understanding India's crop production, India's agriculture sector. All right. So what is this crop production, or how did it begin? We need to understand a little bit about its history. Now, when we talk about history of agriculture, history of crop production, we all know, say 10,000 BC, or if we go back to ancient times, when there was no civilization, basically, what was man? Man was basically hunter and gatherer. What we used to do, we used to hunt, we used to gather, and a small tribe used to live, and the men basically used to go out, hunt, get the food, and they survived, right? So food, where does it come from? See, if you're a vegetarian, we do consume plant-based food. If someone is a non-vegetarian, we have animal-based food. But initially, we started as hunter and gatherer. So everybody started, I would say, as non-vegetarians, basically, right? The ancestors. Slowly and steadily, settled life began, right? And with that settled life, we started to domesticate animals first. Around 8,700 BC, we started domesticating sheep. We started domesticating goat. We started domesticating other animals. Then we realized that these animals can be used for a higher purpose. That means for agriculture, for cropping. Then we started to find out some of the crops which are useful for man. Means we started cultivation of wheat, we started cultivation of barley. Later on, we also started cultivation of maize. So what happened? Initially, we were simple hunters and gatherers, but slowly and steadily, we understood that we can crop some plants and we can consume them for our nutrition. But in the initial age, say Stone Age, we had the implements or we had tools of stone. So using these stone tools, we used to go for some sort of subsistence agriculture. But later on, slowly and steadily, in the Iron Age, in the Chalcolithic Age, we started to discover different methods, different techniques evolved, and slowly and steadily, we started domesticating animals also. So we started using animals for drought power. We started cultivating crops. And finally, today, we live in the age where you use technology. All right. So if you have to connect this with your ancient history, you do understand that in the ancient history, we can talk about the Harappan civilization, we can talk about any other civilization where slowly and steadily cultivation started. There also, you must have seen that during the Harappan age, we have evidences of rice, we have evidences of barley, we have evidences of wheat. In fact, if we talk about the locations in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, huge granaries have been found there. That means they were cultivators. They used to cultivate, they used to store food. So food grains were produced. That's the history of agriculture, basically, right? So the idea here, or prima facie, what we have established till now is that for our survival, we need food and we need enormous amount of food. That's why we go for massive crop production, right? Now, crop production means producing some sort of a food grain, some sort of crop. What is the basic definition of this crop? See, a crop can be, first of all, this is very important from MCQ point of view. A crop can be a plant or an animal. Please remember this, right? A plant or an animal, but colloquially or generally we use it only for plants. It can be a plant or animal product that is grown and that is harvested extensively, either for profit, that means one, for money, or second one, for your own subsistence, that means for you to eat or for you to consume. That is the basic definition of a crop. So we started crop production. In the modern times, we use immense technology where we try to produce it in surplus, because we consume, we also want to export. That means from economic point of view also, we are producing more and more food grains. That means for our food security, we need this, correct? So this discussion is also connected to food security. So we understood crop, we understood crop production. But the question is, sir, when do we put these crops, or what are there any specific cropping seasons in our country? See, in India, there are 3 cropping seasons. In NCERT, it initially talks about, the NCERT class 8 talks about Kharif and Rabi. So we have 3 seasons. One is Kharif season, one is Rabi season, but there is another season. It's called Zaid cropping or Zaid season. See, Kharif cropping, Kharif, the name is Kharif. It is basically cropping during the rainy season. And the season here is basically from June to September. Now you can talk about this particular time, right? Right now we are going through summer, but it does feel like a little rainy season because some incessant rain is happening, untimely rain is happening throughout our country, right? But in general, April and May are very hot months of the year. Now, after this heat, in June, from 1st June approximately, the monsoon starts. And once the monsoon rain comes, then the soil becomes wet. We wait for that soil to dry or to become appropriate so that we can start our cropping season. That's basically the Kharif season. So, Kharif, we can also say colloquially, they are basically summer crops. Because after summer, as soon as the first rains happen, then we start our cropping from June to September. Rabi crops are basically winter crops. Now, in short, you can simply say winter crop. That's why Kharif is summer crop and Rabi is winter crop. Now, winter cropping means you crop somewhere around, or you sow somewhere around October and you harvest around February, March. So these are winter crops. There is also another season in between, that's the Zaid crop. Zaid is basically just after your winter cropping. So during the summer season itself, say for example from March to approximately May, June, I can say. And during the summer season, you do get a lot of vegetables and fruits, specific vegetables and fruits, right? Why? Because they are summer crops. And in Zaid, we normally crop what? We normally crop vegetables and fruits, Now you must have seen that during the summer season you get watermelon, right? You get cucumber, you get other kinds of water-based vegetables, fruits which we consume. So three cropping seasons. But predominantly from the perspective of food production or crop production, we do have Kharif and Rabi, two main seasons of cropping in India. So the question that's in front of us is, sir, what are these crops specifically? And you said we have two cropping seasons. So in Kharif, we specifically crop certain kinds of food grains or certain kinds of crops. Say for example, Kharif summer crops are basically rice, maize, sorghum. Sorghum is jowar, right? You have pearl millet, you have bajra, finger millet, groundnut, etc. These are some of the examples of Kharif or summer crops. In Rabi, that means at the beginning of winter, which means these crops need cold temperature. They need dry season, of course they need water also, but they need cold temperature, meaning wheat, barley, oats, chickpea, linseed. These are some of the examples. Now question is, sir, what is going to happen if I am going to crop, say, Rabi crop during Kharif season or Kharif crop during Rabi season? Anything can be done. You need to understand that there's no hard and fast rule, something like this. But what happens if I crop, say if I crop wheat during the Kharif season, during the summer season, the productivity would be less. If I crop at the proper timing, if I crop at the proper cropping season, the yield would be higher. Untimely cropping, untimely sowing is going to give you lesser yields. That's why there are certain questions. Why paddy cannot be grown in winter season? I would say paddy can be grown in winter season, but the productivity would be low because paddy needs a lot of water. And again, it needs some specified amount of time for its growth. Question is, paddy requires a lot of water and that's why it is in rainy season. That's the answer. But there is no hard and fast rule. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. It depends on the productivity, it depends on the yield. There is appropriate time or characteristics that are needed for these crops, appropriate time and characteristic needed for these crops. That is why specifically we crop these during the summer, these during the winter. All right. Right. So that's basically the cropping seasons. Now let's talk about the agricultural process, because this is the important domain of our discussion today. We need to understand crop production. That's the first process, meaning first we start with soil preparation, then we move in this particular direction. In fact, at the end of the discussion, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to tell you how you're going to prepare for the agriculture sector. How are you going to develop your notes for agriculture sector? Because there are so many mains questions in UPSC Civil Services mains specifically to one of these aspects, or many a times multiple questions might also appear. So what do we go through, or what is the process that we follow in this agricultural production? First is I need land. I prepare the land. Now there is a timing for preparation of land. I told you for Kharif season, I need first rains. If it is not raining, then I can also go for some sort of irrigation and prepare the land. But first step is requirement of land, preparation of land. Then I sow the seeds. Then I go for application of fertilizers and manures. Then irrigation is needed. Then I need to protect from the weeds, harvesting and storage. These are the processes. Let's talk about these processes step by step. The first step, preparation of the soil. Now, why do we need to prepare the soil? Now, in our previous lectures or previous NCERT discussions, we have spoken about the soil profile. And I told you most of the fertility of the soil is in these two layers, the O layer and the A layer. That means organic layer and the topsoil, because they contain the fertile material which is needed for crop production. For crop production, for a plant, it basically needs nitrogen, phosphorus, right, potassium. All these things or all these nutrients are found mostly in the top layer. That is why we need to prepare the soil. See, preparation of soil and leveling has multiple benefits, or I would say they are the basic requirements for crop production. Why do we need it? Because we need to first of all loosen the soil. Soil has to be loosened because air has to enter the soil. That means soil aeration is required. And after soil aeration, we also need to level the soil. So there are two aspects here of soil preparation. First of all, I need the soil to, I need the air to enter the soil, aeration of the soil. And second one is to breaking down of the decaying material, right? So how do we prepare it? Eventually, I need a land something like this. And how do I prepare the land? By a process called as tilling or plowing. And for that, I use equipment like plowshare. What do I do? First of all, I plow the land. That means big boulders or big structures of soil are created, and soil is aerated. And when the soil is aerated, what happens? Its structure is broken up. If there are any weeds, those weeds are also over, they also end. Apart from that, if there is any crop residue from the previous cropping season, that would also decay. Why? Because of the aeration, because of the oxygen availability, the earthworms and microorganic or microbial activity would be enhanced, which further increases productivity. So first of all, I plow it, there would be bigger boulders, etc. But I have to level the soil also. Soil preparation includes two things. First is soil aeration, and second one is soil leveling. Now, soil leveling is needed. Why? It's quite understandable, because I need to irrigate the land, and for irrigation of the land, I need it to be a little bit flat, or rather flat, so that the water or the irrigation can move very easily across the land. That's the basic understanding. So how do we prepare this land? I told you, we till or we plow. Using what? We use different equipments. Earlier, these plowshares were made up of stones. Later on, we slowly moved to plowshare, a wooden plowshare, then wooden plowshare where you have some sort of iron equipment at the end. We can also use hoe. A hoe is one kind of an equipment which is used with drought animals, which was used with drought animals, where this plow is rather sharp. Now, why is it sharp? Because we want to break the bigger boulders or the bigger size soil metal which have been held together, because I want my soil to be crushed. And for that, a hoe is very useful. And also, this hoe is sharp because it also takes along with it whatever crop residue is left or whatever weeds are left out. So a plowshare or a hoe is used along with these drought animals. Now, this was in our traditional setup, but these days it has become very easy. These days we have moved towards mechanization. There are so many agricultural extension schemes which talk about mechanization of agriculture in India. Now, mechanization means we use equipment like this. These days we have tractors, and this tractor, it comes with different kinds of attachments. You know that. And here, for preparation of land, there are various tilling equipments, there are various cultivators and different kinds of plowing equipments. You simply attach this to the tractor and run the tractor across the land. Your land would be leveled. First of all, mixing of the soil, mixing of the two layers of the soil, that is the O topsoil or the O layer and A layer, they will be mixed, and the organic activity or the microbial activity will take place, aeration will happen, and then we use some other kind of equipment to level the land. Levelers are used. So our land is ready. The first step is over. The land is ready. The next step is I need to go for seeds or sowing. Now, for sowing, first of all, I need to select the seeds. Now, what used to happen during the traditional agriculture setup was that we used to crop for the first season, and then we keep some amount of seeds for the next cultivation. And there we have to go for selection. How do we go for selection? A very basic method is to sieve it, right? Even now we use it in our farm, right? We have a farm in my village where what do we do is we basically take the seeds from one particular bag and we pass them through sieve, and one quality or one size of seeds are selected. Apart from that, there are various traditional methods. Say in the olden times, what used to happen was, say for example, gram seeds. Now, gram seeds are simply poured in water, and whichever they start to float, they are hollow. That means they're not very healthy seeds which will not lead to sapling. So we remove that, and whatever are sunk seeds, we take them and we sow it. That was the basic idea. But these days things have become very easy. There have been so many seed companies. For example, in the last Kharif season, we had bought this JS335 soybean seeds. So simply buy these seeds, buy the bags, and whatever is required for per hectare, you just go for sowing. So selection of seed is very important, right? Selection of seed is very important for a farmer. Why? Even if I buy from a company, I need to make sure that whatever seeds I buy, they are the next cropping production, they have to be fertile, because I have to reuse those seeds only. Why? I don't want to buy every time from these companies, right? That's why I need to ensure that. And that is one of the issues which is there with the genetically modified crops also. Please keep a track of that, right? So I have done seed selection. Then I go for sowing. Now, sowing is a process of putting the seeds in the soil. Now, I have to put it deep enough so that they grow into sapling. Now what do? I have already prepared the land, I have leveled the land, and then I go for sowing. Now in the traditional setup, again, I had brought animals. Instead of a plowshare now, I just use an equipment, a funnel kind of equipment. It can be a bi-piped or a tri-piped funnel also, where you can directly sow the seeds here. Now this was a traditional method. These days we have tractors, we have directly sowing equipment, something like this, where you have equipment something like this. You put seeds in a huge bucket here, and then the seeds directly enter. It's called a seed drill. A seed drill which is simply connected to tractor, and the tractor is moved across the farm. Sowing is done. Earlier, the sowing activity using the drought animals or drought power was quite extensive. That means it used to go on for a couple of days, I can say. But these days, within a day, you can sow hectares of land using a tractor. Very easy these days. See, sowing of seeds is specifically done for certain crops, but certain crops we need to put the saplings or put the seedlings there, right? Not all the crops can be grown by sowing seeds. We know, you must have seen this particular example of rice or paddy. In paddy, there are many manual labor or manual workers needed, where this entirely drained land, their seedlings are planted into it. The same applies even for banana cultivation also. Paddy, banana cultivation, there we go for sapling or a seedling which is planted there. Because in such season, see what is going to happen, because for paddy extensive water is needed. I need the entire land to be drenched with water, and if I put seeds here, then there is very low probability of them growing out successfully in completely drained land. Why? Because there is no aeration. That is why I go for the sapling or the seedling kind of cultivation here. And these seedlings we develop in a nursery. We know that. All right. So sowing aspect is over. The third aspect is adding of manure and fertilizers. All right. Now we need to understand a difference between these two terms. What is manure? What is fertilizer? See, fertilizers are basically chemicals. They are in the form of inorganic salts. What are the chemicals that we use in our country? And these fertilizers are produced in factories. Big fertilizer factories are there. They basically produce a large amount of urea, which is very rich in nitrogen. We also produce a lot of complex fertilizers, say in different proportion of NPK. That means nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Different combinations come. You can also add some amount of sulfur to it. There are different combinations of these fertilizers which are available, right? These are chemical fertilizers. But manure is something which is organic. In our previous discussions also, in our previous NCERT discussion, we have seen that manure is basically produced by decomposition of organic material, say for instance cattle dung or plant residue. We have spoken about composting, vermicomposting. So manure is more organic. Now in fact, even before the preparation of land, many a times what we do is I spread manure before the preparation of soil itself, so that it takes a little bit of time for decomposition of this manure, and then we go for preparation of land so that manure mixes completely with the soil. Many times we use these processes also, and manure provides a lot of humus. Now the question is, so why do we need these? Why do we need this? Why do we need manure or fertilizers compulsorily? Do I need to add it? Yes, you need to add it. Why? Because let's talk about what is happening to the nutrients from soil. See, this is the soil. A plant grows. When a plant grows, all the nutrients from this soil are going into this plant. And where is this plant, or where are these nutrients going? I am using them, or I am utilizing them to eat. That means a major chunk of these nutrients are now out of soil and into the plant, and now with us. That's why the soil is continuously deprived of these nutrients, and I have to replenish them continuously. That is why I need to add manure or fertilizers, so that the soil is replenished with the required nutrients. That's why we do a lot of soil testing and add a requisite amount of fertilizers. But that doesn't happen in India, because multiple times we have discussed that also. In India, there is extensive usage of urea. That means the fertilizer usage is skewed towards nitrogen in India. Why? We have spoken about that also, because urea is highly subsidized. But the question is, So do I always need to do this? I would say not necessarily, because we can also use some sort of natural means for replenishment of soil fertility. One of the ideas, simply leave the land idle. That means do not cultivate it for one particular season, so that the soil gets replenished automatically, right? The other ideas can be crop rotation, where we use specifically the cultivation of pulses or some sort of plant which help in nitrogen fixation. There are many plants, many pulses where rhizobium, a bacteria in the soil, it helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen into the soil itself. So crop rotation can also help in enhancing the soil fertility. But the best and the easiest method is to add manure and fertilizers for sure. So we add manures and fertilizers to enhance the soil fertility. So we prepared the land, we selected the seeds, we added manure and fertilizer also. But apart from this, we also need water now. We need irrigation, right? Irrigation is extremely necessary. We know for photosynthesis, we need carbon dioxide, we need water, we need sunlight, and we need nutrients. So nutrients have been provided here. Sunlight is automatically available. Seeds have already been put. Carbon dioxide is available from atmosphere, and water is being supplied by us. Now, in a natural setup, of course, we rely mostly on rain-fed agriculture, correct? And in India, even today, large amount of agriculture is rain-fed. That means we rely on rain gods. We rely on monsoon. But when we talk about industrial agriculture or commercial cultivation, we go for some sort of irrigation facilities where I can provide water facilities 365 days to a plant. That means the water can be made available at any point of time. Now, traditionally also, we used to use different setups, right? Because we did not have electrical power at that time. What we used to do, we level the land and we ensure that there are different channels made in the land so that water can move through those channels and the land is irrigated. Different methods were used. For example, there was a moat. Simply draw the water from this well and pour it down here. It moves through your crop. You can see here the channels are made here. Apart from that, you also have chain pump. A chain pump, again, it draws water and it puts water directly into your land. We also had dhekli, right? Under this dhekli system also, you can see the land has been divided into rectangular channels where the water will very easily move. Or else we had a system called as rahat. Now this rahat is a system where draught animal is used. Mainly bulls are used. They move in a circular motion and the water is drained or water is taken out from the water source and it enters the land. These are some of the traditional methods of irrigation. These days, we have moved towards modern means of irrigation because today we have electrical pumps. Today we have good kind of pipeline which can even survive intense sunlight. So what we have done, we have created piping system. We have created the sprinkler system, right? From the well, there is a pump which has been installed. The water is drawn and it falls as if it's raining. Sprinkler system. We also have different kind of drip irrigation system. We talk about water efficiency. We already know that in India, many areas are water stressed. There is less amount of water available for irrigation, less amount of water available for almost all the things. We have discussed a chapter on water before, right? So we are looking for more efficiency through sprinkler irrigation, drip irrigation here. So irrigation facilities are provided. In fact, if you look at India's map, you will see from in the northern side there are more and more irrigation facilities available, but for in the southern side, it's because we do not find perennial rivers. They mostly rely on rain and they mostly have to develop these kind of irrigation facilities. In the northern side, there are perennial rivers, so they have created big canal systems for irrigation, especially in Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh. Even in some parts of Gujarat and Rajasthan, you do see a lot of canal irrigation. But in the southern side or in the peninsula side, you see a lot of bore wells and the normal well system, bore wells and the other well systems, right? So this is the modern irrigation system. So we irrigated the land also. That means now my crop is growing properly, but there is something which is hampering my crop. When it is growing, weeds are hampering my crop. Weeds are plants which are unnecessary. You already know that I want to cultivate paddy. That means I want rice. But in that field of rice, I also have so many weeds. There is parthenium, there is other kind of grass, other kind of weed. Now what happens? They are now competing. See what I did, I put manure and fertilizer for my crop. But the same manure and fertilizer is being used by a weed, which is competing with my plant for the fertilizers, for the water, even for the sunlight, and ultimately for productivity. And for me, paddy is important, but not that weed. So what do I have to do? I have to remove these weeds. I have to remove these weeds because they unnecessarily compete. They are undesirable plants which I do not want. They interfere or they even compete with my crop. Many times they can be even poisonous to human beings. So what do? I can go for manually removing it. I have sickle kind of a thing. There was manual labor before available. These days in agriculture, we see a shortage of labor also. But when the labor was available, they used to take a sickle. They used to go for weeding. They used to remove the weed. But these days, we have developed different kind of weedicide, herbicides, etc. All right. But again, in agriculture, there is a lot of importance for timing of application of herbicide, weedicide, etc. And what is the time? You need to ensure that these weeds do not grow. When the weeds are just this height, just apply the weedicide. It is going to be really effective on them. But once they grow, once they mature, then they will surely compete with the plant. All right. So we protect from the weeds. The crop is grown. What do we do eventually? We harvest it, right? Harvesting. These days, harvesters have come. Big harvesters have come. A combine harvester has come, and it usually takes, if it is a cereal crop, say for example, if it is rice, if it is wheat, if it is soybean, normally from 3 to 4 or 5 months the crop would be ready. But some crops do take higher. For instance, there is tur dal or arhar dal, right? Tur dal or arhar dal. It takes around 6 months. Sugarcane is a year-round crop. So harvesting depends on when you have sowed or when you have gone for cropping and when this crop is mature. When the crop is mature, we harvest it. Now, in the traditional system, what we used to do is we used to cut them. First of all, we used to cut the crop. We used to make a big lump of that particular crop, and then we go for threshing. Manual labor and threshing. And when you thresh it, basically threshing means there would be chaff which is left out and the crop or the food grains are stored here. Now many a times you must have seen people also throw the harvested crop on the roads. What happens? This threshing activity is done by the vehicles. The vehicles, when they move from move over the crop, then the food grains are collected from the roadside. The chaff is left out. Now after this harvesting also, we go for winnowing. You know that, because I have to remove this chaff. So chaff removal is done by winnowing manually. Whenever there is wind, if it's a windy day, they go for winnowing. And say if the wind direction is like this, the food grains or the crop will fall down here, and the chaff is going to move, or chaff is going to make another lump on the other side. But these days, such processes are not followed. These days, we have these harvesters. Okay, that's why you must have seen that whenever there is harvesting, there are a lot of harvesting festivals also. Especially we come across in January. You must have seen harvesting festivals, a lot of harvesting festivals in January. For instance, there is Lori, there is Sankranti, right? There is Baisakhi, etc. These are all harvesting festivals across India. There are many festivals. You can see here harvest seasons. Pongal is harvest festival, Baisakhi, Holi, Diwali, right? Nabanya, Bihu. There are 3 kinds of Bihu also in Assam. So please make a note of harvesting festivals in India, because sometimes an MCQ can appear here regarding which harvesting festival is from which particular state. All right. So I've harvested my crop. I'm ready. Say I have gone for a manual kind of a job, or I have gone for a combine harvester. This combine harvester, it harvests, and from here the crop is directly, the food grain is directly collected there. I'm ready with it. But the question is, where do I store it? Because as a farmer, I want to store it somewhere, because I want a proper rate. Now, storage of food grain, storage of produce is extremely important. In fact, if you read the Food and Agriculture Organization's report, you will see that in India, there is a lot of wastage of food grains, especially because of not storing them properly, because the food grains can be stored for a longer time. We need food grains, first of all, for price stabilization. We need food grains directly to provide it as provided through the PDS system, through the public distribution systems, right? So for all these things, we need food grains. So we need some sort of storage setup. Why do we need proper storage? First of all, I have to protect it from rain. That means protect it from moisture. I have to protect it from rodents. I have to protect it from insects, because if rodents and insect infestation takes place, then the crop would be completely wasted. That's why what do? I create some kind of go downs. There are different schemes also going on. In fact, there was a scheme, the Gramin Bhandaran Yojana, where the government itself will build a warehouse in the village so that people can store their food grains, people can store their harvested crop in the government go down. There are some kind of go downs, or they can be big silos which can be constructed for industries and etc. If it is a very big company, then they do create these elongated silos where food grain can be stored. In fact, Food Corporation of India has many such silos which they have created. But in villages, you must have seen the government warehouses. And if I am a farmer, if I do not have space in my particular home to store my crop, where do I store it? I keep it with the government warehouse, and I get a warehouse receipt, and I can get loan even on that warehouse receipt, right? So storage is also extremely important. So these are some of the basic steps that we follow in our agricultural process. That means first you prepare the land, then you sow your seeds, select the seeds. Sowing of the seeds is needed. You need to apply fertilizer and manure during the sowing also, and afterwards during the growth period also. You need to irrigate it, you need to continuously give it water, and you need to ensure that there is very little competition from the weeds. Go for weeding, go for insecticide, go for pesticides also during that stage itself, and then you harvest it and eventually you store it. Now this is for a plant-based crop. As I told you, food for vegetarians is plant-based, but food for animals is again through different kind of setup. For example, if one has to produce pork, then there has to be a pig farm, or if one needs chicken, then there has to be a poultry farm. So basically, the large amount of food or crop, I would say, for non-vegetarians is also produced through animal husbandry. We'll talk about this in our subsequent lectures. Say when we move into NCERT 9th and 10th, we'll talk about these ideas also in a more extensive way. But as of now, the focus was primarily on the agricultural process, right? That's the basic idea from this particular chapter. Now, as I promised you, I have to tell you something regarding the preparation of agricultural sector, right? See, we spoke about this particular process, the agricultural process, right? We spoke about the agricultural process. Now, in this agricultural process, I told you, first we prepare the land. Let me just clear it out. First, we prepare the land. Then we sow the seeds. We add manure. We go for fertilizer application. We irrigate. We protect them from weeds. We also protect them from insects, pesticides, pests, etc. Then harvesting, storage, and I would write the step 8 here. Step 8 is something which we need for our preparation, because there are a lot of issues here also, because we have to market it as a farmer. What I want to do is I want to store, and then I want to sell it at a proper price, right? So this would be, I would say the complete agricultural process for a farmer. Now, whenever you're preparing for UPSC civil services examination, what is needed is you need to make comprehensive notes for a sector. Especially when you're preparing for GS paper 3 economics, you need proper preparation for, say, agriculture sector, the road sector, the railway sector, this aviation sector, right? Shipping sector, ports, all these things have to be prepared in a comprehensive way. Now, whenever we talk about agriculture sector, there are different streams, and this is what you need to understand. Agriculture can be nothing out of this, right? What? For agriculture, I need to understand there is soil preparation needed. Soil preparation means I need land. Now understand what is the problem with land in India. First of all, there is land fragmentation, right? So for preparation of soil, farmer needs agricultural credit, right? Apart from that, we need sowing. For sowing, you need seeds. Now, what is the problem with seeds in India? Do I have high variety seeds? A classic example being the arhar or pulses, the tuar dal. We are trying to reduce the Cropping time of arhar dal. Arhar, it's a crop which runs for almost more than 6 months. 6 months, 180 days, a little higher than 180 days. Now, Pusa is doing a lot of research. In fact, Pusa Arhar 16 was developed. It has reduced the amount of time for maturing of arhar dal or arhar crop. So you need to understand what are the problems with seeds. Are farmers getting proper seeds? Do farmers have credit or money to buy these seeds? Then, adding manure or fertilizers. What is the problem with the fertilizer sector in India? Irrigation. Do we have irrigation facilities in equitable way across our country? How can we increase efficiency of water application, water usage in our country? Go for sprinkler irrigation, go for drip irrigation. Now, for going for drip irrigation, do farmers have the capacity to move towards drip irrigation, or do I have to provide some specific scheme to spread drip irrigation in my country? These are the kind of ideas that you need. Apart from that, protection from weeds. How can I protect them from weeds? How can I protect the crop from the weeds? Is there any environmental impact of the weedicides, insecticides, pesticides on the environment? All these things have to be understood. Harvesting. What is the issue with harvesting? When you harvest, what are the post-harvest problem? Post-harvest problem means in terms of storage, in terms of marketing. What are the issues? In India, we talk about the monopoly of APMCs, Agriculture Produce Marketing Committees. What are the issues of these APMCs? So you need to prepare at each and every stage very comprehensively in terms of what are the issues, what are the ideas that are needed, what is the government doing, is there any major scheme which is being run by government in these different steps or in these different stages. That way you will be completely ready for any question on agriculture, right? I hope that you do follow this particular process in your UPSC civil services preparation. All right, so that's it in this particular discussion, and you do know that if you like this video and if you want to follow me, you can follow me on this particular ID at the rate Rahul Sai 222. I do respond on Saturdays and Sundays if you message me on Instagram. I'll see you soon in the next chapter. Thank you for watching this video. Jai Hind.